Okay, topic 4.9 talks about ratios and proportions and how to apply them. In order to actually apply ratios and proportions, the first thing that you need to know is the difference between them. A ratio is actually almost always going to contain either a colon or a division bar of some sort. A proportion is actually going to have an equal sign. So if you've got fractions or numbers that are being compared, so this is basically a comparison or relationship between two numbers. And again, it could have a colon or a division sign. It might be the ratio of the sizes is 4 to 8. Again, this is read as 2. Or a common one is, let's say, commercials that say 3 out of 4 doctors say such and such. Okay, so that's a ratio. It's just a comparison or relationship between two different things. A proportion is two ratios that are equal, or proportionate is kind of what that word means. So this down here is an example of a proportion because you have two ratios, A over B and C over D, that are equal. Now, the way that we solve this is using cross multiplication. So on these two fractions, I'm going to cross multiply, meaning I'm going to do A times D and B times C. So A to D, that means A times D, should equal B times C, which is just BC. So down here it says determine whether each pair of ratios forms a proportion. In other words, they have to be equal. So I would have to have 4 over 6 and set that equal to 12 over 16. These are both ratios. When I put an equal sign between them, that means that they are proportionate. Would help if I moved my paper up, huh? So now what we're going to do is cross multiply. This, the 4 times the 16, and the 6 times the 12. Now I'm going to write it out. You don't have to do this every time if you kind of understand what we're doing. And now we're going to see if they are equal. So you could get out your calculator. And I hope you guys can see the screen, but 4 times 16 is 64. And then 6 times 12 is 72. So I have 64 equals 72. Are those equal? No. So this is not proportionate. So now you try part B on your own and see if they come out to be proportionate. All right, number 2, this now says solve each of the following proportions. So the differences here is that now we have to cross multiply like this. So we now have 7.8 times 3.82. And that's supposed to be equal to 4 times A. Well, again, if I get my calculator out, 7.8 times 3.82 is 29.796. And that's equal to 4 times A, which is just 4A. So at this point, remember, we're trying to get A by itself. So these two are multiplied. The opposite would be to divide. So again, 29.796 is already there. So I'm going to say divided by 4, enter. And it pops up with 7.449. So 7.449 equals A. Now, if I'm not sure that that's the correct answer, I could always double check it and see if these two things are equal. Put this over 7.449 and see if it comes out to the same thing as this over this. Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump down here and do number 4. You guys can do 3 on your own. See if I can get this paper folded to where it's not too distracting here. So number 4, again, remember we need to cross multiply. So that would be 3 times x plus 6. And that should equal 5 times x. On the left, remember you have to distribute. This goes here and here. So 3 times x is just 3x. And then 3 times 6 would be 18. And then 5 times x is just 5x. So now, as I've done with some of you, I'm going to use the method of algebra where we do the x's on the left and the numbers on the right. And many of you, if you're good at algebra, you can do this in your head without having to use this method, but it will work even when you get into Algebra 2. So this is an x. It's supposed to be on the left because x's are on the left, so this is going to stay. So I just write it down. 18 is a number. It's supposed to be on the right. So if I have to change sides of the equal sign, I'm going to change the sign. So if I say this is supposed to go, I change the sign and put negative 18. Notice it's on the other side of the equal sign. And then 5x, it's to the right of the equal sign, but it has an x. So it's supposed to be on the left. So it's supposed to change. So that means it changes signs. So positive 5x becomes negative. Now all I have to do is combine like terms. 3x minus 5x is negative 2x, and that equals negative 18. And then your last step is always to divide. So then negative 2 cancels out, and then negative 18 divided by negative 2 is positive 9. Good. So I'm going to help you get this one set up. So again, we would cross multiply. This would be 4 times x minus 2 equals 2 times x plus 6. And it really doesn't matter what goes first. So if there's a whole number and then something with an x, I'll usually put the whole number first. So notice I'm not starting on the bottom and doing the top. It doesn't matter if you do this one first. So this one could have been on this side, that could have been on that side. There's not really rhyme or reason as long as you have these two together multiplied on one side and these two multiplied together on the other side. So you need to distribute. Make sure you know that this is a negative 2. Same thing on this side. And then solve for x down here. So you guys need to go back up and do number 3 and number 5. You guys can finish those. Once you're confident about proportions and ratios, then you're ready to flip it over onto the back. On the back, this is where we're actually going to use ratios and proportions in order to solve word problems. So number 6 says Josephina sells helium balloons. She charges $9 for 12 balloons. At this rate, what would she charge for 50 balloons? The most important thing that you need to notice right here is this. Before you try to set up ratios and proportions, you're always going to want to do the words first, okay? And you should see that on every problem. So I'm going right now and I'm kind of outlining that in pink. I know you can't see me doing it, but we're putting that on every one of these words first because it's super important. So what we need to figure out is the main subjects of the sentence. So it says the charge, and then it's 4 balloons. But 4 is always in a ratio using the word per. So when we go to set this up, we would say the words would be the charge per, there's our per line, which is the same as a division bar, balloon. So the first one that they give us is $9 for 12 balloons. So when I set it up, I would have 9 over 12 because this is the charge, $9. 12 is the balloons. At this rate, what would she charge for 50 balloons? Okay, this is really important. So when we go to set this up, it says balloons here. So the 50 is the balloons. What is our X? And that's the charge. What would she charge for 50 balloons? When we go to set this equal, the balloons is on the bottom. Notice our words. So 50 goes on the bottom. And what would she charge? That's what we're trying to figure out. So that's where we put our X. So now you guys can cross multiply. And I'll go ahead and do this one for you. So 12 times X should equal 9 times 50. So this is just 12X. And then 9 times 50, if you're not sure, again, you could get out your calculator. So it's 450. Sorry, it's kind of down there at the bottom of the screen. So I would put 450. And then I would take that answer and I would divide it by 12. So divided by 12, enter. And I get 37.5. But the last thing is to make sure that you actually read the question. What would she charge for 50 balloons? So you would write your answer. She would charge 37, oops, forgot the E, 37.50. Good. So down here, the next one, number 7, it says a photocopy machine copied 50 pages in 1.5 minutes. At this rate, how long will the machine take to copy 90 pages? So again, we need to look at what's important. We've got pages and minutes. So here it says how long, and then it says 90 pages. So that's where we're going to use that to set up our wording. So we're comparing pages per minute. That is the rate. So now the first ratio that we get is 50 pages in 1.5 minutes. Well, now I need to set up my second ratio. I've got 90 pages. Well, pages is on the top or the bottom. We'll go back and look. Pages is actually on the top. So 90 goes up here. How long? That's what we're trying to figure out. So that's our X. That's actually down here this time. So now you can do this on your own, cross multiply and solve, and again, make sure that you write your answer as a sentence. Okay. So now let's look at one that's a little different. We're going to look at number 8. Okay. Maybe I better fold it. There we go. So number 8 says a recent bond issue passed with 3 out of 4 votes in favor of the bond. A total of 2,550 people voted against the bond. How many people voted in favor of the bond? This is where it gets a little crazy, okay? This is a different type of ratio. We've got 3 out of 4 in favor of the bond. So this is total, or let's do people in favor, because that's the 3 out of 4. So this is going to be total voters, okay, or votes. We've got 4 votes that were in favor. So 3 out of 4 votes are in favor. But the next sentence, this is again very important. This was votes. This is in favor of the bond. This says 2,550 people voted against the bond. So then how many people voted in favor of the bond? So this is where it gets a little bit harder. So 3 out of 4 were in favor of the bond. Well, how many does that leave to be not in favor? If there's 4 people total and 3 voted in favor, it should be 1. So that means 1 in 4 people voted not in favor. So this would be not in favor compared to total votes. So we've got 2 different ratios here. This one goes against the bond. So this number would actually go with this ratio, not with this ratio. So this would be what we could use to set up a total or a proportion. So this is the number of people that voted against the bond, not in favor. So we would put 2,550 here. And then this would be the total number of people that voted. So if I solve this by cross multiplying, I have 1 times x equals 4 times 2,550. So I'm going to get out my handy dandy calculator and multiply that. So 4 times 2,550 is 10,200. So this is 10,200 people. So this is 10,200 people, or total voters. That's what we just solved for, because the number on bottom was total voters, or votes. If I know that 2,550 of those voted against, the question says how many voted in favor. So I would need to subtract this to get the total that voted in favor of the bond. So you just subtract this and give me your final answer. Then you're ready to get your notes checked and come get your assignment.